When the ruthless Alpha King receives a broken Omega in a wheelchair as entertainment from her abusive uncle, he expects nothing more than a cruel distraction, but the moment their eyes meet, the mating bond snaps into place with earth-shattering intensity. Now this powerful ruler who's conquered kingdoms finds himself willing to move heaven and earth to heal the shattered girl who holds his heart, even as dark forces conspire to tear them apart. Will the love of an Alpha King be enough to restore what was brutally taken from his destined mate? The massive wooden doors of the castle flew open with a loud bang that echoed through the stone walls like thunder. Rain poured down outside, making everything look dark and scary. Inside the great hall, candles flickered and danced, casting moving shadows everywhere, like ghosts playing hide and seek. Alpha King Darien stood by the huge fireplace, his golden eyes glowing in the dim light. He was tall and strong, with shoulders broad enough to carry the weight of an entire kingdom. But tonight, he looked tired, very tired. For 3 whole years, he had ruled alone. No queen, no children. His advisors kept telling him he needed to find a mate soon, or other packs might try to take over his throne. The king's nose twitched. A new smell drifted into the room, something that made his heart beat faster. It was sweet like flowers, but also sad like tears, mixed with fear, lots of fear. What is that? He whispered to himself, turning toward the giant doors. Elder Matthias walked in, his black robes dripping with rainwater. Behind him came 2 guards carrying something. No, not something. Someone. A girl sat in a strange chair with wheels, her hands tied together with rough rope. Her red hair was messy and dirty, hanging in front of her face like a curtain trying to hide her from the world. But even with her hair covering most of her face, Darien could see her eyes. They were purple. Not regular blue or brown, but actual purple, like the sky right before a big storm hits. Those eyes held no hope at all. They looked like someone who had given up on everything good in life. "Your Majesty," Elder Matthias said with a big fake smile, "I brought you a gift. This Omega girl is broken. She can't walk or fight or do normal wolf things, but maybe you can use her for entertainment." The word entertainment made Darien's stomach twist. He knew what that meant, and he didn't like it one bit. The girl, she couldn't be more than 20, sat perfectly still in her wheeled chair. She didn't look up, didn't make a sound. It was like she had learned that being invisible was the only way to stay safe. "Leave us," Darien commanded, his voice so strong that even the stones seemed to shake. "Everyone out, now." The guards and Elder Matthias rushed away so fast they almost tripped over each other. Only the king and the mysterious girl remained in the giant room. The fire crackled, rain kept hitting the windows, and somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled across the mountains. Darien walked toward her slowly, like he was approaching a wounded animal. Something deep inside his chest felt strange, hot, like someone had lit a match right next to his heart. The girl's scent got stronger as he got closer. Flowers and sadness, yes, but also something else. Something that made his wolf spirit pace back and forth inside his mind, restless and excited. He knelt down so his face was level with hers. This close, he could see small scars on her hands, old ones and new ones. Someone had hurt her many times. "Look at me," he said softly, so softly that if someone had been standing by the door, they wouldn't have heard him. The girl's shoulders tensed up like she expected him to hit her. But slowly, very slowly, she lifted her head. Those amazing purple eyes met his golden ones. And then it happened. Snap, like a rubber band breaking, or lightning striking a tree. Something invisible but incredibly strong connected them together. A golden rope that tied his soul to hers. His wolf howled with joy inside his head. This girl, this broken, scared, beautiful girl, was his mate, but she didn't seem to feel it. Her eyes stayed empty and hopeless. Whatever had happened to her had damaged the part of her that should have recognized him as her other half. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice coming out as barely a whisper even though he was the king of all wolves. "Seraphina," she answered without looking at him directly. "But you can call me whatever you want, Alpha King. I'll answer to anything." Her voice was soft and sweet, but underneath it was something that broke his heart. She talked like someone who had forgotten she was a person with her own name and feelings. "Seraphina," he repeated, tasting her name like it was made of honey and magic. "That's a beautiful name. It means burning one in the old language." For just a second, surprise flickered across her face, like she had forgotten her name actually meant something special. The king studied her more carefully. Her clothes were old and torn. Her wrists had rope burns from being tied up, but her back was straight, and there was something about the way she held her head that told him she came from important bloodlines. This wasn't just any Omega. This was someone who should have been treated like royalty. "Who did this to you?" he asked, anger making his voice deeper. Seraphina flinched, like his question was a physical blow. "It doesn't matter," she whispered. "I belong to you now. You can do whatever you want with me." Those words made Darian's hands curl into fists. Someone had taught her to think of herself as a thing to be owned, instead of a person to be loved. Someone had taken away everything that made her feel valuable. But as he looked into those purple eyes, he made a promise to himself. He was going to find out who had hurt his mate, and he was going to make sure they never hurt anyone ever again. "You don't belong to me," he said firmly. "You belong to yourself, and I'm going to help you remember that." The next morning brought sunshine that streamed through the tall windows of Seraphina's new room. She woke up in the softest bed she had ever felt, covered by blankets that were warmer than summer days. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then reality crashed back down on her like cold water. She was in the Alpha King's castle. He owned her now, just like Uncle Vincent had owned her before. Any minute, he would come to collect his payment for giving her food and shelter. A gentle knock on the door made her heart jump into her throat. "Come in," she called, trying to make her voice sound small and obedient. But instead of the king, a kind-looking woman with gray hair entered, pushing a breakfast tray. "Good morning, dear. I'm Martha, the head cook. His Majesty asked me to bring you something to eat." Seraphina stared at the food. Real eggs. Fresh bread with butter. Fruit that actually looked ripe and delicious. When was the last time she had eaten anything this good? "Is this all for me?" she asked carefully. There had to be a trick somewhere. Martha smiled. "Of course, honey. You eat every bite. You need to get your strength back." After Martha left, Seraphina ate slowly, waiting for someone to burst in and take the food away. It didn't happen. She actually got to finish the whole meal without being interrupted or punished. An hour later, the king himself appeared in her doorway. In the daylight, he looked even more powerful than he had the night before. His dark hair was neat and clean. His golden eyes seemed to see everything. And he was huge, not fat, but tall and muscular, like someone who could fight off a dozen enemies without breaking a sweat. "Good morning," he said, staying by the door instead of coming closer. "Did you sleep well?" Seraphina nodded, not trusting her voice. Why was he being nice to her? What did he want? "I brought you something," King Darian said, wheeling in a chair that looked nothing like the broken wooden one she usually used. This one was made of silver metal that sparkled in the sunlight. The wheels were big and smooth. The seat had soft cushions in deep blue fabric. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Your old chair looked uncomfortable," he explained. "This one was made by the best craftsman in the kingdom. It should be much easier to move around in." Seraphina touched the armrest with one finger. The metal was cool and smooth. No splinters, no wobbly wheels that got stuck on everything. It was the most beautiful thing anyone had ever given her. "Why?" she asked, looking up at him with confusion all over her face. King Darian knelt down beside her new chair, bringing his eyes level with hers again. Because you deserve good things. Because you're not broken, no matter what anyone has told you. Tears started building up behind Serafina's eyes, but she blinked them away fast. Crying was dangerous. It made people angry. I don't need charity, she said, trying to sound stronger than she felt. I can earn my keep. I know how to clean and cook and other things. The king's face darkened like storm clouds. What other things? Serafina's cheeks turned red. She looked down at her hands. Whatever you want me to do. Uncle Vincent taught me that omegas have to be useful or they get thrown away. Your uncle. King Darian's voice turned into a growl that made the windows rattle. Vincent Shadowmere. Serafina's head snapped up. How did he know Uncle Vincent's last name? Fear crawled up her spine like ice-cold fingers. You know him? She whispered. I know of him, the king corrected. He runs the Shadowmere pack about 200 miles south of here. He has a reputation for being cruel. That was putting it nicely. Uncle Vincent didn't just hurt people. He enjoyed it. He collected broken things and made them even more broken, just because he could. He said I was worthless, Serafina admitted quietly. Said no alpha would ever want a mate who couldn't walk or fight or give him strong children, so he might as well get some use out of me before I died. King Darian's hands clenched into fists so tight his knuckles turned white. He lied. About everything. How do you know? She asked. You barely know me. The king was quiet for a long moment, like he was trying to decide whether to tell her something important. Finally, he spoke. Because my wolf knows. The moment I saw you, something inside me recognized you as mine. Not to own, but to protect, to care for, to love. Serafina's mouth fell open. That's impossible. I can't even feel my wolf anymore. She's been hiding so deep inside me that I don't think she exists. She exists, King Darian said with absolute certainty. She's just hurt and scared, but she's still there, even if that's true. Serafina said, shaking her head. I can't be your mate. Look at me. I can't shift, can't run through the forest with you, can't give you the air everyone expects. Your advisors would never accept me. Then they'll have to learn. The king replied simply. Because I'm not giving you up. Something warm and unfamiliar stirred in Serafina's chest. Hope, maybe. Or the beginning of trust. It felt dangerous and wonderful at the same time. I don't know how to be someone's mate, she confessed. I only know how to survive. King Darian smiled, and it transformed his whole face from stern ruler to something softer. Then that's where we'll start, one day at a time. No pressure, no expectations. Just let me take care of you for a while. Why would you want to do that? Because, he said, reaching out to gently touch her hand, everyone deserves to be cared for. And you, Serafina, deserve everything good this world has to offer. The silver breakfast tray crashed to the marble floor as Serafina jolted awake, her heart hammering like war drums. Another nightmare. Another memory of Uncle Vincent's dungeon clawing its way to the surface. But this time, something was different. Someone was there. Easy, little wolf. Darian's deep voice cut through her panic like warm honey. He sat in the chair beside her bed, not touching, just present. You're safe. Safe. The word felt foreign on her tongue. 3 weeks had passed since he'd brought her to these golden chambers, and still she couldn't believe it was real. The bed softer than clouds, windows that opened to rose gardens instead of prison bars, and food that came without price or pain. I broke your dishes again, she whispered, staring at the scattered pieces. Good. His amber eyes sparkled with something that might have been mischief. I hate those plates anyway. Too fancy. Despite everything, a small smile tugged at her lips. This Alpha King who commanded armies was sitting on her floor, picking up broken china like it was the most important task in his kingdom. Why? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Why do you treat me like I'm worth something? Darian's hand stilled. When he looked at her, She saw something that made her chest tight, not pity, but recognition. Like he saw something in her that she'd forgotten existed. Because you are worth something, everything. He stood, his massive frame somehow gentle as he moved to her window. But I have something to tell you. Something about who you really are. Her blood turned to ice. What do you mean? Your mother wasn't just any Omega, Serafina. She was Elena Moonheart, the White Wolf. He turned, and in his eyes she saw truth that would change everything. Which makes you the most powerful shifter bloodline in existence. The words hit her like lightning. Her mother had died when she was 5, but she remembered the stories whispered in pack circles, the White Wolf, who could heal with a touch, who could command truth itself. Uncle Vincent had always said those were just fairy tales. That's impossible. I'm broken. I can't even feel my wolf anymore. Your wolf isn't gone, little one. It's protecting itself. And you. Darian moved closer, his scent wrapping around her like safety. But there are people who know the truth about your bloodline. People who will do anything to control that power. As if summoned by his words, a commotion erupted in the courtyard below. Shouting voices, the clash of steel. Serafina wheeled to the window, her heart sinking at what she saw. Lady Morgana Blackwater strode through the gates like she owned them, her midnight hair flowing behind her like a war banner. Behind her marched 50 of her father's finest warriors, all armed, all wearing the cold expressions of wolves hunting prey. She's early, Darian muttered, his jaw tightening. Who is she? Trouble. He moved to the door, pausing to look back. Stay here. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me. But Serafina had spent too many years watching powerful people make decisions about her life while she sat helpless. Not anymore. No. The word came out stronger than she expected. I'm done hiding. She followed him through corridors that suddenly felt like a maze, her silver wheelchair moving silent as smoke across marble floors. Servants scattered like startled birds as they passed, and she caught whispers that made her stomach churn. Disgrace to the crown. Crippled Omega when he could have. What kind of heir could she give him? The great hall fell silent as they entered. Lady Morgana stood before the throne like a queen already crowned, her emerald dress cut to show every curve, her smile sharp as winter's edge. Your Majesty! Her voice dripped honey over poison. I trust you received my father's message about the upcoming alliance. I received it. Darian's voice could have frozen flames, and my answer remains no. Morgana's green eyes flicked to Serafina with barely hidden disgust. I see you're still entertaining yourself with damaged goods. How long before you grow bored of this charity case? Heat flooded Serafina's cheeks, but before she could speak, something unexpected happened. The moonstone pendant at her throat, the only thing of her mother's she still possessed, began to glow with soft silver light. The hall gasped as one. Morgana took a step back, her confident mask slipping for just a moment. Interesting. She recovered smoothly. So the rumors are true. Vincent's broken toy carries the cursed bloodline. Cursed? Serafina's voice came out smaller than she wanted. Oh, my dear child. Morgana's smile turned predatory. Did no one tell you? The White Wolf power comes at a price. Every woman who's carried it has died young, usually after bringing destruction to everyone they loved. Your mother lasted longer than most, 25 whole years before the madness took her. The pendant's glow flickered, and Serafina felt something crack inside her chest. You're lying. Am I? Morgana pulled out a scroll, unfurling it with theatrical flair. The historical records are quite clear. 18 white wolves in the last 3 centuries, 18 early graves, 18 trails of broken families and ruined kingdoms. The words hit like physical blows. Everything made sense now why Uncle Vincent had kept her locked away, why he'd broken her body but never tried to break her mind completely. He'd been waiting for the power to manifest, waiting to use her as a weapon until it killed her. That's enough. Darian's voice cracked like a whip. But Morgana wasn't finished. "Face reality, Your Majesty. You're not saving her, you're signing her death warrant. And when the madness takes her, how many innocents will die? How many will she destroy before the curse claims her life?" The pendant's light died completely. Around them, the court murmured agreement, fear replacing curiosity in their eyes. Serafina felt their stares like physical weight, pressing down until she could barely breathe. Maybe Morgana was right. Maybe she was just a broken, dangerous thing that would bring ruin to everyone she touched. Maybe Uncle Vincent had been protecting the world by keeping her caged. But then Darian's hand covered hers, warm and steady and unafraid. "The only curse here," he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall, "is the cowardice that would abandon someone because they might be dangerous, instead of helping them learn to be powerful." His golden eyes found hers, and in them she saw something that made her heart race, not fear of what she might become, but anticipation of who she already was. "The moon rises in 3 days, Morgana said, her voice cutting through the moment like ice. "The Lunar Council has demanded your presence to discuss the White Wolf situation. They're very concerned about the implications for kingdom stability." She turned to leave, her warriors falling into formation behind her. But at the doorway, she paused for one final strike. "Enjoy these last peaceful days together, Your Majesty. After the council makes their decision, you may not have a choice about keeping your dangerous little pet." The threat hung in the air long after she was gone, and Serafina realized their quiet healing time was over. The storm was coming, whether they were ready or not. Blood dripped onto the ancient stone floor as Serafina pressed her back against the cold dungeon wall, her heart pounding so loud she was sure it would give away their hiding spot. Above them, boots thundered across the floor as Vincent's assassins searched every room in the castle. "This way." Darian's whisper was barely audible as he motioned toward a hidden passage she'd never noticed. But moving meant leaving her wheelchair behind, and without it, she was completely helpless. The irony wasn't lost on her 3 months ago. She would have welcomed death as an escape. Now, with something worth living for, danger had found them anyway. "I can't," she breathed, gesturing at her useless legs. Without hesitation, Darian scooped her into his arms like she weighed nothing. His warmth surrounded her as they slipped into darkness, her chair left behind like abandoned armor. The passage led to his private study, where maps covered every surface and battle plans lay scattered like fallen leaves. But it was the figure waiting in the shadows that made her blood freeze. "Hello, little niece." Vincent stepped into the candlelight, his scarred face twisted into the same cruel smile that haunted her nightmares. "Did you really think stone walls could keep me out?" He wasn't alone. A dozen of his pack warriors filled the room, their eyes glowing yellow in the dim light. But something was wrong with them, their movements too sharp, their sense carrying an oily wrongness that made her stomach turn. "Dark magic," Darian growled, setting her gently in a chair. "You've been using forbidden rituals on your own pack." Vincent laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "Desperate times, nephew. Your little mate has something that belongs to me, and I've come to collect." "She belongs to no one. She belongs to whoever can use her power." Vincent's eyes fixed on the pendant at her throat, now glowing with agitated silver light. "Do you know what she really is, Alpha King? Not just the White Wolf bloodline, she's the key to controlling every shifter in existence." The words sent ice through her veins. "What are you talking about?" "The White Wolf doesn't just carry power, little niece. She amplifies it. In the right hands, she could command every pack, every alpha, every wolf to kneel." His smile turned savage. "Why do you think I kept you all these years? Not for cruelty, for destiny." Serafina felt the world tilt around her. Every kindness Darian had shown her, every moment of safety, had it all been a lie? Was she really just a weapon everyone wanted to claim? "You're wrong." But even as she said it, doubt crept in. The pendant pulsed brighter, and she could feel something stirring in the depths of her soul, something vast and hungry and terrifying. Vincent's warriors moved closer, their corrupted forms shifting between human and beast. "Give her to me, boy, and I'll let you live to find a nice, normal mate. One who won't accidentally tear your mind apart when her power awakens." Never. The fight erupted like lightning. Darien shifted mid-leap, his massive black wolf colliding with two enemies at once. But Vincent's corrupted warriors weren't fighting fair. Dark magic gave them unnatural speed and strength, and there were too many of them. Serafina watched in horror as claws raked across Darien's shoulder, drawing blood that steamed in the cold air. He was strong, but 12 against 1 was impossible odds. That's when something snapped inside her. The pendant blazed like a star, and suddenly she could feel them, every wolf in the room, their hearts beating like drums in her mind. The dark magic that corrupted Vincent's warriors felt like oil on water, unnatural and wrong. Without thinking, she reached out with senses she didn't know she possessed. Stop. The word carried power that made the stone walls tremble. Every wolf in the room froze, caught in the grip of something older and deeper than alpha commands. Vincent's eyes went wide with triumph and terror. Yes, yes. Do you feel it, little niece? The power of life and death over every breathing wolf. She did feel it. It was intoxicating and terrifying, the ability to command hearts to stop beating, to force submission from the strongest alphas, to remake the shifter world in whatever image she chose. But as the dark energy flowed through her, she also felt something else: pain. Not physical agony, but the deeper hurt of souls corrupted against their nature. Vincent's warriors weren't evil. They were victims, their minds twisted by magic they'd never chosen to embrace. Instead of crushing them, she did something Vincent hadn't expected. She healed them. Silver light poured from the pendant, washing over the room like healing rain. The dark magic shriveled and died, leaving Vincent's warriors staggering and confused but free. Their eyes cleared from yellow back to human colors as they remembered who they really were. "What have you done?" Vincent snarled. "What you never could," Serafina replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I chose compassion over control." But the effort had cost her. The pendant's light flickered and died, leaving her drained and shaking. Vincent's warriors might be freed, but Vincent himself remained untouched, and his fury was terrible to behold. "You foolish child. You've wasted the greatest power in existence on worthless sentiment." He raised his hand, claws extending. "If you won't be my weapon, you'll be my warning to others." Darien's roar shook the castle as he threw himself between them. But Vincent was ready this time. Poisoned claws raked across the Alpha King's chest, and he collapsed with a sound that tore Serafina's heart in half. "No!" She tried to reach him, but her chair was rooms away, and her legs wouldn't obey her desperate commands. Vincent smiled as he watched her struggle. "This is what caring gets you, little niece. Everyone you love will pay the price for your defiance." But as he raised his claws for the killing blow, something unexpected happened. The freed warriors, the same ones who'd served him moments before, stepped between him and their fallen king. "Enough, Vincent." The largest one, a grizzled man with kind eyes, shook his head slowly. "We followed you because we thought you were strong. But real strength doesn't come from breaking others. You dare. We dare because she showed us who we really are." The warrior gestured to Serafina. "And what you really are." Vincent found himself surrounded by his own former soldiers, all of them choosing mercy over revenge, healing over harm. His empire of fear crumbled in minutes, leaving him alone and powerless for the first time in decades. But Serafina barely noticed his defeat. All her attention was focused on Darien, who lay too still in the spreading pool of his own blood. "Please," she whispered, crawling across the stone floor to reach him. "Please don't leave me." His golden eyes fluttered open, unfocused but alive. "Never," he breathed. "Never leaving you." As she pressed her hands to his wounds, trying to stop the bleeding, she realized something that would change everything. The pendant might be dark, but her heart still blazed with silver light. And sometimes, love was the strongest magic of all. Blood dripped from Darian's claws as he stared at the torn letter in his hands. The message was simple, but terrifying. Your broken toy knows too much. Surrender her, or watch your kingdom burn. He crumpled the paper, his wolf snarling inside his chest like a caged beast. Serafina sat by the window in her silver chair, watching storm clouds gather over the mountains. She'd been quiet for 3 days now, ever since the attack on the eastern border. Something was eating at her mind, and Darian could feel her worry through their bond, like ice water in his veins. You're thinking too loud, she said without turning around. Her voice carried that soft strength he'd grown to love, gentle as morning rain but steady as stone. The attacks aren't random, she continued, rolling her chair to face him. Look at this. She spread a map across her lap, marked with red dots where their enemies had struck. They're not trying to win territory. They're trying to tire you out. Darian knelt beside her chair, studying the pattern she'd discovered. Each attack had pulled him further from the castle, kept him away for longer periods. You think they want me gone? I think they want me alone. Her fingers traced the moonstone pendant at her throat, the same one that had revealed her mother's memories. Uncle Vincent isn't just angry that I escaped. He's afraid of what I might remember. That night, Serafina's dreams turned dark. She found herself in a place that smelled like old leather, and fear her uncle's private study. But this time, she wasn't the broken child hiding in the corner. Her mother's memories flowed through the pendant like silver light, showing her things that had been hidden for years. She saw Vincent meeting with shadowy figures, heard him promise them something called the White Wolf's Heart, a power that could control all shifters. Her mother had died protecting this secret, and Vincent had spent years trying to break it out of Serafina through pain and fear. The attacks? She whispered, jolting awake. They're not about territory at all. Darian was beside her instantly, his warm hands steadying her shaking ones. What did you see? My uncle made a deal with something dark, something that wants to use my bloodline to control every shifter in the realm. She gripped his hands tighter. That's why he kept me broken, not from cruelty, but from fear. If I ever fully healed, if my wolf ever came back strong, you'd be unstoppable, Darian finished, understanding flooding his golden eyes. But their moment of discovery was shattered by urgent pounding on their door. Captain Marcus burst in, his face grim. Your Majesty, we've intercepted communications. There's going to be an attack on the Moonlight Festival. The festival was only 2 days away, when hundreds of families would gather in the capital to celebrate the harvest moon. If enemies struck, then innocent blood would flow like rivers. We cancel it, Darian said immediately. No. Serafina's voice cut through the room like a blade. That's exactly what they want. Fear, division, people hiding instead of living. She turned to Marcus. How many guards can we position without being obvious? As they planned through the night, Serafina felt something stirring deep inside her chest. Not her wolf, that gentle presence was still healing. This was something older, wilder, connected to the pendant's warm pulse against her skin. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Lady Morgana Blackwater stood in their doorway, her usual proud expression replaced by something that looked almost like shame. I need to tell you both something, Morgana said, refusing the chair Darian offered. About the attacks. About why they're really happening. Serafina studied the other woman's face. Through her growing powers, she could sense layers of emotion, guilt, fear, and surprisingly, genuine regret. I was supposed to be Vincent's spy, Morgana continued. He promised my father an alliance if I could get close to you, learn your weaknesses. She looked directly at Serafina. But watching you these past months, seeing how you've transformed not just yourself, but this entire kingdom, I can't be part of destroying that. What's coming? Darian's voice was deadly quiet. Tomorrow night, during the festival, Vincent has allies, dark ones. They planned to use the crowd's fear to weaken the magical protections around the castle. Then they'll strike directly at Serafina. The room fell silent, except for the tick of the old clock on the mantel. Finally, Serafina spoke. "Good. Let them come." Both Darian and Morgana stared at her as if she'd lost her mind. "You want them to attack?" Morgana whispered. Serafina's smile was soft but fierce. "I'm tired of running from what I am. Tomorrow night, under the full moon, with my people around me and my mate beside me." The pendant flared with silver light. "Tomorrow night, they'll learn what happens when you mistake healing for weakness." Festival music drifted through the castle windows, but Darian couldn't enjoy the cheerful sounds. Every shadow could hide an enemy. Every stranger's scent made his wolf pace anxiously. Beside him, Serafina sat perfectly calm in her decorated chair, watching the crowds below with eyes that seemed to glow in the moonlight. "You feel it too, don't you?" she asked quietly. The wrongness in the air. He nodded. Even through the joy and laughter of the festival, something dark pressed against his senses, like a storm about to break. "Are you sure about this plan?" "As sure as I can be." She touched the moonstone pendant. "My mother's memories are getting clearer. She faced something like this, once chose to stand and fight instead of hide. It cost her everything, but it saved thousands of lives." A commotion in the courtyard below caught their attention. Families, scattered as hooded figures, appeared between the festival booths, moving with purpose toward the castle. But these weren't ordinary attackers. They moved wrong, their scents carrying something that made Darian's skin crawl. "Shadow wolves," Serafina breathed. Vincent found them, the lost ones who sold their souls for power. The first scream pierced the night, then another. Panic spread through the crowd like wildfire as the shadow wolves revealed their true forms, creatures of darkness and smoke that could barely hold a physical shape. "Stay here," Darian commanded, but Serafina was already rolling toward the door. "Not a chance. This is my fight too." They reached the great hall just as Vincent burst through the main doors, flanked by a dozen shadow wolves. But it was the thing behind him that made Serafina's blood freeze, a figure wrapped in darkness, so deep it seemed to eat the light around it. "Hello, niece," Vincent's voice carried across the hall. "Did you miss me?" The shadow wolves spread out, surrounding them, but Darian noticed something odd. They kept their distance from Serafina, as if afraid to get too close. "You brought friends," Serafina observed, her voice steady despite the terror radiating from the trapped festival goers behind them. "Desperate much?" Vincent's laugh was ugly. "Desperate? I'm about to claim the greatest power in the shifter world. Your mother's gift, awakened by trauma and fear. The Shadow Master here has been very patient, waiting for the right moment." The dark figure stepped forward, and when it spoke, its voice was like wind through a graveyard. "The White Wolf's bloodline will serve us willingly, or we will break what remains of her mind until it does." That's when Serafina began to laugh. It started as a soft chuckle but grew stronger, richer, until it filled the entire hall. The shadow wolves whimpered and backed away. Even Vincent looked uncertain. "You want to know a secret?" Serafina said, her eyes now blazing with silver light. "I'm not broken anymore. Haven't been for months. I just let you think I was." The moonstone pendant erupted in brilliant radiance. Behind Serafina, a massive wolf made of pure silver light began to materialize, not her own wolf, but her mother's spirit, called forth by love and courage. "Impossible," the Shadow Master hissed. "You cannot shift. You have no wolf." "You're right," Serafina agreed. "I can't shift. But I have something better." She gestured to the spirit wolf, to Darian standing ready to defend her, to Morgana and the guards flooding into the hall. "I have family. I have love. I have people worth fighting for." The battle that followed shook the very foundations of the castle. Darian and his warriors fought the shadow wolves with claw and fang, while Morgana led the evacuation of terrified civilians. But the real war was happening between Seraphina and the Shadow Master, a contest of wills that would determine the fate of every shifter in the realm. "You think love makes you strong?" the Shadow Master taunted, sending waves of dark energy that would have crushed a normal person. "Love makes you weak, vulnerable. Watch." Suddenly, Darien cried out, falling to his knees as shadow magic wrapped around him like chains. Vincent grinned, pressing a cursed blade to the Alpha King's throat. "Choose, niece. Your mate's life or your power. Give us what we want, and he lives. Resist, and watch him die." For a moment, the hall fell silent except for Darian's labored breathing. Seraphina stared at the man she loved, seeing the trust in his golden eyes even as death pressed against his neck. Then she smiled. "You're right about one thing," she said to the Shadow Master. "Love does make me vulnerable. But you forgot something important." The silver light around her blazed brighter. "It also makes me absolutely terrifying when someone threatens what I love." What happened next would be talked about for generations. Seraphina's power didn't just awaken, it exploded outward in a wave of silver fire that burned away every trace of shadow magic in the hall. The Shadow Master screamed as its borrowed darkness was stripped away, revealing nothing but empty robes that crumbled to dust. Vincent, suddenly powerless and alone, dropped his blade with shaking hands. "Seraphina, please, I'm family." "No," she said quietly, rolling her chair toward him. "Family protects each other. Family heals together. You're just a stranger who happened to share my blood." As dawn broke over the castle, the shadow wolves were gone, their master destroyed. Vincent sat in chains, looking older and smaller than Seraphina had ever seen him. The festival grounds were being cleaned up, and slowly, carefully, life was returning to normal. But everything had changed. The broken Omega was gone, replaced by a queen whose power came not from her ability to walk, but from her choice to stand up for those she loved. The screaming wouldn't stop. 3 days after Vincent's defeat, Seraphina sat in her silver wheelchair beside the castle's medical wing, listening to the cries of wounded soldiers from both sides. Her hands trembled as she gripped the moonstone pendant that now blazed with constant white light her mother's power had awakened, but controlling it felt like trying to hold lightning in her bare hands. "I can heal them," she whispered to Darien, who knelt beside her chair. "I can feel their pain like it's my own. But what if I make it worse?" Before he could answer, a child's scream pierced the air. A little girl, no more than 7, had been caught in the crossfire. Her leg was crushed, and the healers shook their heads in defeat. Without thinking, Seraphina rolled toward the child's bed, her power surging forward like a river breaking through a dam. Light poured from her hands, silver and warm as moonbeams. The child's leg began to mend, bones knitting together, flesh healing clean. But as the miracle unfolded, Seraphina felt something unexpected. She wasn't just healing the wound. She was taking the child's pain into herself, feeling every broken bone as if it were her own. When the healing finished, the little girl sat up, completely whole. The room erupted in gasps and whispers, but Seraphina slumped in her chair, blood trickling from her nose, her face pale as winter snow. "The power comes with a price," she realized aloud. "Every healing costs me something." Lady Morgana stepped forward from the crowd, her expression unreadable. For months, she had been Seraphina's rival, but now something had changed in her eyes. "Then we'll share the burden," she said simply. "My pack has healers too. We'll work together." It was the first crack in the wall between them, but not the last surprise of the day. Elder Matthias, the same man who had delivered Seraphina to the castle months ago, pushed through the crowd. His face was twisted with rage and something darker jealousy that burned like acid in his eyes. "This is unnatural," he shouted. "An Omega who cannot shift should not possess such power. She's dangerous." His words hit Seraphina like physical blows. Deep inside, the scared girl who had lived in Vincent's dungeons whispered that maybe he was right. Maybe she was too broken to be trusted with such gifts. But then Darian's hand found hers, warm and steady as a heartbeat. "The only thing dangerous here," he said, his voice carrying the authority of an alpha king, "is anyone who threatens my mate." The confrontation that followed would reshape everything. Matthias revealed he had been working with Vincent all along, selling information about the kingdom's defenses. Worse, he had been the one to suggest Serafina as entertainment, knowing exactly who she was and what power ran in her blood. "Vincent promised me position when he conquered this kingdom," Matthias snarled. "But you ruined everything by actually caring about that broken thing." The insult was too much for Darian's wolf. Power exploded from him in waves that sent everyone but Serafina stumbling backward. His eyes blazed gold, and for a moment, the civilized king disappeared, replaced by the primal alpha who had conquered half the continent. But Serafina's voice cut through his rage like a blade through silk. "Stop!" One word, spoken softly, but it carried such authority that even Darian's wolf obeyed. The silver light around Serafina pulsed once, and suddenly everyone in the room could feel what she felt, not just her pain, but her compassion, her determination to build rather than destroy. "Matthias," she said, looking directly at the elder who had betrayed them all, "I forgive you." The words hit the room like a thunderclap. Morgana gasped. Darian stared at his mate as if seeing her for the first time. Even Matthias stumbled backward, confusion replacing his rage. "But forgiveness doesn't mean no consequences," Serafina continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. "You'll work in the healing wards, helping those hurt by the choices you made. You'll see every day what real strength looks like. Not the power to harm, but the courage to heal." It was a punishment more profound than death, and everyone knew it. As the crowd dispersed, Morgana lingered. She approached Serafina's wheelchair with careful steps, her pride warring with something that looked suspiciously like respect. "I owe you an apology," she said finally. "I thought strength meant never showing weakness. I thought leadership meant never backing down. But you just showed more courage in 5 minutes than I've shown in my entire life." Serafina smiled, the expression transforming her face from merely pretty to genuinely beautiful. Courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about being terrified and choosing kindness anyway. That night, as moonlight streamed through the castle windows, Serafina made a decision that would change everything. She couldn't walk, might never walk again. The healing power came with a cost that could eventually kill her. She was an Omega in a world that valued alphas, a broken girl who had been given a crown she never asked for. But she was also exactly who she was meant to be. "I'm not going to spend my life trying to be someone else," she told Darian as they sat together in their private chambers. "I'm not going to pretend my wheelchair doesn't exist or hide the scars on my heart. This is who I am, and who I am is enough." Darian pulled her from the chair onto their bed, holding her close as if she were made of precious metal. "You're not enough," he whispered against her hair. "You're everything." 5 years had passed, and the great hall of Ravencrest Keep buzzed with activity that would have been impossible to imagine on that storm-lashed night when Serafina first arrived. Children's laughter echoed off the ancient stones as a group of young orphans chased each other between the massive pillars, their game of tag transforming the once somber throne room into something alive and joyful. Serafina rolled her chair between them with practiced ease, her silver wheels catching the afternoon sunlight that streamed through newly installed skylights. Her crown, a delicate circlet of silver, set with her mother's moonstone, caught the light and threw rainbow sparkles across the walls, delighting the children who reached up to catch the dancing colors. "Mama Sarah," called out little Marcus, a boy they had adopted after his parents died in Vincent's final assault. He had Darian's dark hair but Serafina's violet eyes, though he was no blood relation to either of them. "Tell us the story about the white wolf again." Before Serafina could answer, a commotion at the far end of the hall caught her attention. Darian strode through the doors, but he wasn't alone. Behind him walked a familiar figure, Vincent, but not the Vincent she remembered from their final battle. Gone was the cruel Alpha who had tormented her for years. This man was broken in ways that had nothing to do with physical wounds. His hair had gone completely white. His eyes held the hollow look of someone who had stared too long into the abyss of his own actions. And his hands shook with tremors that spoke of a mind struggling to process the weight of his crimes. The children immediately sensed the tension and moved closer to Serafina, their small hands touching her chair as if drawing strength from her presence. She felt their fear and confusion, but also their trust that she would protect them, just as she always had. "Why is he here?" Morgana asked, stepping protectively in front of the group. Over the years, she had become more than an ally. She was family. The sister Serafina had never had, fierce in her loyalty and gentle in her love for the children they all helped raise. Darian's expression was carefully neutral, but Serafina could read the storm behind his golden eyes. "He asked to see you," he told his wife. "I told him no, but then." He paused, running a hand through his hair. "He said he was dying." Vincent stumbled forward, his steps unsteady. When he spoke, his voice was nothing like the commanding roar Serafina remembered. It was broken, weak, threaded with pain that ran soul deep. "I don't expect forgiveness," he began, his words barely above a whisper. "I don't deserve it, but I needed to see what you built, what you became despite everything I did to destroy you." Serafina studied her former tormentor with eyes that had learned to see beyond surface appearances. Where others saw a dangerous alpha, she saw a man consumed by his own fear and hatred. Someone who had broken others because he himself was shattered beyond repair. "The healers say I have maybe days left," Vincent continued. "Some kind of poison in my blood that's been growing since our last battle. But before I die, I need to tell you something. About your mother. About why I really kept you alive." The hall fell silent except for the soft breathing of the children and the distant sound of wind through the windows. Even the adults seemed to hold their breath, sensing that whatever came next would change everything. "Your mother didn't just carry the White Wolf bloodline," Vincent said, his voice growing stronger with each word, as if speaking the truth was giving him back pieces of himself. "She was my sister, my twin, and when she chose your father over the arranged marriage that would have made our pack the most powerful in the realm, I let jealousy poison everything." The revelation hit Serafina like a physical blow. Uncle. He had called himself her uncle, but she had always assumed it was a title, not literal truth. They were family, blood family. "I told myself I was keeping you to control your power," Vincent continued, tears now streaming down his weathered face. "But the truth is, I kept you because you looked like her, because hurting you felt like punishing her for leaving me behind." Darian moved closer to Serafina's chair, his protective instincts flaring, but she raised a hand to stop him. This moment required something more than protection. It required understanding. "You destroyed both our lives because of jealousy," she said, her voice steady despite the earthquake of emotions running through her. "You could have been family, real family. Instead, you chose to be a monster." "Yes," Vincent whispered. "I did, and I can't undo any of it. But maybe I can give you something to help make sense of it all." From inside his worn coat, he pulled out a leather journal, its pages yellowed with age. "Your mother's diary. I kept it all these years, telling myself it was to remember her crimes. But really, it was because I couldn't let go of the sister I loved and lost." Serafina accepted the journal with trembling hands. Even through the leather cover, she could feel the residual warmth of her mother's touch, preserved by some kind of emotional magic she didn't fully understand. "There are things in there about your power," Vincent said. "Ways to use it without the cost. Your mother figured out how to heal others by healing the connections between souls instead of taking their pain into yourself. It was a gift beyond measure." But Serafina found herself looking not at the journal, but at the broken man who had given it to her. For the first time in her life, she saw Vincent not as the monster from her nightmares, but as what he had always been, a hurt child who never learned how to heal his own wounds. "I forgive you," she said simply. The words hung in the air like silver bells, beautiful and impossible and true. Vincent collapsed to his knees, sobs racking his frame as years of guilt and self-hatred finally found release. "I don't understand," Morgana whispered to Darian. "How can she forgive him after everything?" Darian watched his wife with the wonder that had never faded, even after 5 years of marriage. "Because," he said softly, "she learned that forgiveness isn't about what people deserve. It's about what kind of person you choose to be." Vincent died 3 days later, peacefully in his sleep, in one of the castle's guest chambers. His final words, spoken to Serafina as she sat beside his bed, were an apology that came from the deepest part of his soul. "I'm sorry I never learned how to love you the way you deserved." At his funeral, Serafina spoke words that surprised everyone, including herself. He was family, broken, lost, consumed by his own pain, but family nonetheless. "We honor the good that could have been while acknowledging the harm that was." Months later, as autumn painted the world in shades of gold and crimson, Serafina sat in the castle's new library, her mother's journal open before her. The techniques described within had revolutionized her healing abilities, allowing her to help others without destroying herself in the process. But the real treasure wasn't the magical knowledge, it was the love letters her parents had written to each other, pages full of dreams about the daughter they would raise together, plans cut short by Vincent's jealousy and fear. "They would be proud," Darian said, reading over her shoulder as their adopted children played at their feet. Serafina smiled, closing the journal and looking around at the life they had built. The great hall was full of laughter and light. Former enemies had become family, and love had indeed conquered all, not through grand gestures or magical solutions, but through the daily choice to keep choosing compassion over cruelty, understanding over judgment, hope over despair. "Yes," she agreed, her hand finding his as their children's laughter filled the air around them. "They would be proud of all of us." Outside, snow began to fall, not the harsh storm that had marked her arrival, but gentle flakes that promised renewal, transformation, and the endless possibility of starting fresh. The White Wolf's legacy lived on, not in power or dominance, but in the simple truth that love, given freely and without condition, could indeed change the world.